Do you struggle with choosing a yarn substitute for a crochet pattern that's going to give you very similar results as the recommended yarn? Hi, my name is Michelle Ferguson, and I'm the crochet pattern designer of Two Brothers Blankets. And today I'm going to give you some of my best tips for choosing a really good yarn substitution for your crochet project. All right, so you've gotten a crochet pattern, you see the recommended yarn, and for whatever reason, you don't want to use that yarn. Maybe it's out of your budget. Maybe it's not easily accessible. Maybe you don't like the fiber content. Whatever the reason, you don't want to use that yarn. But you want to get a similar result as you see in the designer's pictures, and you want it to fit well and all that. So you want to choose a yarn that is similar and that is going to give you similar results for that project. I'm here to help. I've got 5 tips for you that will help you choose a really great yarn substitution for your project. All right, first and foremost, I've got to say it as a designer, just a disclaimer, just a preface. I do recommend you use the yarn recommended in the pattern that the designer has recommended, if possible. I totally understand that it's not always possible, and it's just not something you always want to do. If you've got a yarn stash, you might want to use your yarn stash or whatever. But when you can, I do recommend using the same yarn as the designer. The designer has done the heavy lifting for you. There is a reason that they have chosen that yarn for the pattern. They believe it is the best yarn for the pattern, whether that be because of the drape, because of the stitch definition, because of the way it fits, the way it feels on your body, if it's a wearable, the way it blocks, the way it's washable. All kind of things go into choosing a yarn for a pattern design. So that is why they've chosen that yarn. And so I have to say, if you can, use that recommended yarn. But if not, which I totally understand, here are some tips for choosing a really good yarn substitution for that project. All right, number 1, if you can't use the same yarn as the designer, this is probably the most important thing you need to know about choosing a substitution, and that is to use the same weight yarn. I do not recommend using a different weight yarn than what is recommended in the pattern. I never can, especially if it's like a big jump in weight. So if the pattern requires a number 1 fingering weight yarn and you want to use a number 4 worsted weight yarn, that's a big no-no. It's just not going to work out well. You're going to have issues meeting gauge. You're going to have to try to meet gauge, and you're going to have issues with yarn, hook sizes, and how many sizes you need to go down or up. And you may not even be able to meet gauge at all. And if you don't meet gauge, you're going to have to do a lot of, reworking number of stitches, math, measuring, way more measuring, and you're just going to have fit issues all the way along the way. And so I really, really don't recommend it. Now, I know there are some yarns that kind of overlap, like sport and DK weight, or if there's like a really light worsted and DK weight, sometimes they overlap, sometimes they're virtually the same thickness. In that case, if you can meet gauge, I think it's fine. But like a big jump in yarn weights, I never recommend. Besides the whole fit issue, you're also going to have, it's not going to feel the same. It's not going to lay the same. It's not going to drape the same. Things like that. It's not going to be the same project. It's not going to look similar. Things like that. If it's a garment, a worsted weight, that if it requires fingering and you want to use a worsted weight, that thing is going to be heavy to wear. There's reasons they chose the lighter weight, things like that. I just always recommend using the same weight, if nothing else. Use the same weight that is recommended in the pattern. Also, if you can, use the same fiber. Say it's a garment, say it's a summer garment, and we're using a fingering weight yarn, and it's a cotton acrylic blend. If you can find another cotton acrylic fingering weight yarn, that would be perfect. Maybe it's a little on the cheaper or something, and you want to use that one instead. That is great. You're going to get very, very similar results with the same weight and fiber as the recommended yarn in your pattern. So I definitely recommend same weight, and if possible, same fiber as well. All right, number 2, this is a really great resource for getting ideas for different yarn substitutions. Yarnsub.com. I'll put the link in the description. This is a great resource for crocheters and knitters. You can actually type in the recommended yarn from your pattern, and it will give you a whole list of different yarns that you could use to substitute for that yarn. And it like ranks it by weight, like these are all the same weight, this is the same fiber, that this is what we make gauge with, and this is what we make gauge with the recommended yarn, all different things. And it even, I think it has like the top one that says like this is the closest yarn to that yarn. So like it's top recommendation. So it's a really good resource. It doesn't have all yarns, but it has a lot. And so if it's, one of the more commonly used yarns and you want to find a substitute for it, that is a really great resource. And then it'll give you a lot of good ideas. So yarnsub.com. All right, number 3 is Ravelry. If you have Ravelry, you can go to the listing, the pattern listing, and in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see, I think it's the right-hand corner, you're going to see projects. If you click on projects, you're going to see that pattern made by different crocheters. You're going to see pictures. You're going to see, they make their own little project, so their own little like sort of listing. And you're going to see what yarn they use. You're going to see pictures. You're going to see their progress. They can put notes in there. So, I mean, if you're familiar with the projects, you know that there's all kinds of information that you can find out from other crocheters that have made that design, not just the designer. And so you can get a lot of yarn ideas there, and you can see pictures and see how it drapes and looks from these other crocheters who have crocheted the same project, but with different yarns. And so you can kind of get some ideas there. You can also, they also have a yarn section. And so you can actually click on that yarn and get more information about it, find out where you can purchase it, find the fiber content, the weight, and then see even more projects made from that yarn, maybe different projects, just to get an idea, see the colors, all the different things. So Ravelry is a really good resource for seeing the projects of the pattern and for just checking out, information on different yarns. All right, number 4. This one's important. This one might be one of the first ones you do. I should have probably put it at the top of the list, but I'm not really going in any sort of order. But this is probably one of the places you can find a really good recommendation quickly and easily is the designer's website. For me, I write a blog post for every single crochet pattern that I design. And whether it's paid or free, I have a blog post for it. I put all the information that, like, it's just a hub for like everything about that pattern, the construction, the yarn, the sizing, everything. And so I do have a section for the yarn and, why I chose it, what's great about it, where you can get it, stuff like that. And then I usually also put some, if you can't use this yarn, here are some great substitution recommendations. And I will link other yarns that I think will be good substitutes for the project, for the yarn that I recommend. And it's all linked right there. So if you can find the designer's website and find the blog post on it or a listing on it and see if maybe they've listed some recommendations for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a yarn that they've used. Like, I don't necessarily make one in that yarn, but it has similar fiber content, or I just know it would work really well for that project. And so I list a few there, link right to them, and it's an easy way to get some recommendations. If you can't find anything on the designer's website or their listing, you could also probably just reach out via email and be like, hi, I'm unable to use the yarn recommended in this pattern. Do you have any recommendations for substitutions? And most designers will gladly give you their recommendations for a good yarn sub. So look on the designer's website, maybe do that first, and see if they have some substitution recommendations. All right, and lastly, and probably the most simple, is to use something you've already used before. So if you have a favorite fingering weight yarn in your stash or whatever, and it works good, and you've made a garment from it before, a summer top with it before, use that. I mean, it's really that simple. I have go-to yarns that I use over and over because I love them, because I know that they work good as garments. They wash easily, they drape well, they're comfortable, they're not too hot, different things, different factors. And I'm like, that's a really good yarn for this type of garment, and I will use it to design my patterns over and over because it's just like my go-to yarn. I know it works. I know it's nice and comfortable, and I use it often. So if you have that kind of like go-to yarns in that weight or whatever, I say go for it. Use something you've already used. It's tried and true. You know it's going to be comfortable. You know how to wash it. You know it works and it works up well. So yeah, use things that you've already used before and that you know work really well. So those are my tips. Let's recap. Number one, use the same weight as recommended in the pattern, and if possible, use the same fiber. Number two, use the resource yarnsub.com to find ideas for different substitutions for that specific yarn recommended in the pattern. Number three, check Ravelry projects for other yarn ideas from other crocheters that have made that project. And also you can check out the yarn and more details on the yarn right there on Ravelry too. Number four, check the designer's website, see if they have some substitutions recommended for you, or reach out to the designer and ask. And number five, use something you've used before, something tried and true that you know works really well and that you really like. So that way you know you're going to like it. All right, those are my tips for choosing a really good yarn substitution for your project. I hope they were helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up if you like what you see. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.